Hey everybody, Mike B here with another video for you today, and today we're going to be talking about something that actually gets asked pretty frequently in the comments, and I've had it asked probably hundreds if not thousands of times over the past 10 years of having my channel, and that is, why did soldiers put nets on their helmets? Because as you can see, like this M1 right here doesn't have a net on it, and a lot of them didn't. But then you would see things popping up, different handmade things, field-made things, and then eventually actually issued nets. So I'm going to show you a few examples of some original nets and kind of explain to you what the whole purpose of them actually is, go over some different styles, and then we'll talk about some other creative things that soldiers have done with the same idea and principle of the helmet net. So let's get started. For those of you who want the TLDR or TLDW, I guess it would be in this case, it's a pretty simple answer, but I also want to go over some examples and when these helmet nets were used and why, and the fact that they're still being used today. So the TLDR is basically to secure foliage, break up the outline. I know this isn't a net, we'll talk about that in a second. And also to attach stuff like scrim or rags, other things like that, to just break up the silhouette of the helmet a lot and actually add a little bit more color in there. As you can see, this is an M1 or an M2 paratrooper helmet, and these are very commonly seen in like Normandy and stuff with this foliage. Some soldiers on beaches actually had nets with scrim in it like this as well. This scrim would have been issued to troops. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was a handful per person, and they would apply it like this and weave it through. This is an example of another field expedient method of attaching camouflage. It isn't technically a net, but you could also do the same thing with nets. Again, we'll talk about this in a little bit. Well, why not just wear a cloth cover, you ask? Well, cloth covers were a thing in the First World War. They would use like sandbags, and it's called Hessian material. And some British soldiers, or we'll just say Allied soldiers in general, because the French would do it, to a limited extent the Americans, and sometimes the Germans and Austro-Hungarians. So a lot of people would take burlap sacks and make like field expedient covers out of them. And then in the interwar period, they realized you can't attach anything into that burlap because it's so finely woven to break up the silhouette. And it really doesn't do much for breaking up the silhouette, except maybe providing a little bit more of a matte kind of finish on the helmet shells. But you could also accomplish that with mud. So there had to be a way to attach camouflage to break up the silhouette, and for whatever reason, people started putting nets on helmets. This is a practice that I've seen in the interwar years. I'll show you an example really quick. So this is a Swiss model 1918/40 steel helmet. It's really a cool part of my collection. I love it. It's got the person sent it, or it's got his name in it, and then he sent it to his dad, it seems like, with the little postage label thing on there. Anyway, so this is a field expedient net. You can tell this was made out of material that was locally sourced. These little hooks are attached, because I've never seen an actual issued net like this from the Swiss military, but I'm just going to show you examples from countries all around the world from all different time periods, and I thought this one was pretty cool. So yeah, you'd use this to attach foliage and or scrim or just break up the silhouette in general, even with the net alone. So there's that. So when we start getting to World War II, we start looking at more issued, mass-produced helmet nets that were actually issued as an item, like in a soldier's kit, instead of field expedient like the last one. So this is an Italian M73 helmet net, and these started to be issued in around the late 1930s, and they were issued all the way up until they stopped using this in the 1990s. I do sell these at mikesmilitary.com, so just a little shameless plug. I will put a link in the description and probably tag the product so you can get one of your own. They're very cheap. They're very cool nets. I really like them. They're very interesting. But this is an example of an actual mass-produced and issued piece of equipment that started in the late 1930s. Other countries would follow suit. We'll talk about that right now. Some helmets like this Romanian M73 airborne helmet were actually issued with the net already attached to it. It was part of the thing that came from the factory. Although it was pretty chintzy according to a lot of the people that have used these, this is an example of a net being a standard issue on a helmet even as late as the 1970s. So you could weave foliage in here and do all that cool stuff if it held together, which I heard that these broke a lot. But anyway, these things, I'm pretty sure the US started standardizing helmet nets and people would still be field expedient with them. I'm just going to give you a few examples on this video because I don't want this to go too long. I just kind of want to show you how much variation there is out there between, field expedient, handmade, and then actually issued. So now we're going to talk about something really cool. So this is a West German M62, and this is a very common thing in the East German military and West German military in general, is to wear a camouflage field-made cover. This is not an issued item as far as I know. These were all made in the field by people and or made custom. They were never issued this amoeba cover, which is really cool. I've been looking for one of these for years. Anyway, I'll get off the nerdgasm thing. But you see this practice being done quite a bit with different countries even today. is you see a net being worn over a camouflage cover. So not only do you have I'm not even going to attempt that word. I know what I'm trying to say, I just don't know how to say it. Not only do you have kind of the matte finish and the obscure, guys in the comments, you know what I'm talking about. It obscures the silhouette a little bit and the actual color and the shine of the shell. And you've got the net over it to provide you an opportunity to apply camouflage like we've already talked about. Now, this practice is still being done today, and I'll show you an example of that. So here's a British Mark VI that's actually part of my personal collection. And there's nothing really special about it except this cover is so cool. So this is a DPM, a wooden DPM cover, you can see underneath there, right? And there was this chintzy kind of net. I don't know if this is an issued item or what. If you were in the British military, please let me know if this is like an issued item like this net back in like the 90s and mid 2000s before they went to the Mark 7. But I have seen this on the Mark 7 and even currently today. So you've got this engineer tape or whatever kind of tape this you want to call this. Again, if you're in the British military, let me know and please correct me. But yeah, you've got this tape that's commonly seen to hold covers on because they're just a drawstring attached. But then you've still got this net over here so you can weave a bunch of crap in there, and it does in itself contain camouflage. As you can see, it's painted a little bit. Oops, sorry, no you can't. It's painted a little bit, but also you can weave stuff into here to break up the silhouette even further. Now, it's weird because there are foliage loops on the cover as is, and this is common practice all the way back in World War II. If you see a German helmet like an SS cover like this, you can see that there are actually foliage slits, and the Army ones had these too, the field expedient ones, and even the issued ones like these are privately contracted, but they would have foliage loops. Some were in different places and all that stuff, so you can see that there's a cover and foliage loops. Now, the Germans actually did use nets in World War II as well. I can't find my example, but they did wear nets, they wore cloth covers, and then another example is this that I showed you earlier. So you don't see this through the entire war on all fronts. You mainly see this from Normandy onward to the end of the war. Now, this is not a net, but it's the same concept. This would be more close to a net, and this is chicken wire, and this is the correct stuff. I do make up these helmets once in a while and sell them. This is probably the most accurate chicken wire you're ever going to find on the market. It's actually from Europe, and it's made to the original specs on an original kind of, not die, but like a thing to spin this stuff. It's the correct size and everything, and then the wire and all that stuff. I'm tooting my own horn, yes, and I'm definitely doing a shameless plug because I think this is one of the coolest looks of the Second World War. Now, the Germans would use chicken wire in Normandy. I'm going to make an entire video on like German helmet covers standalone and like methods of like the nets and the camouflage and all that stuff and where they were used and all that stuff. In another video, I'm just going to give you kind of a teaser is you only see this popped up in Normandy because one word, hedgerows. So we'll talk about that in another video. That's going to be incoming. Wait for that. Anyway, so this is another method of the same exact principle, except this is just wire. So it's pretty interesting how people in the field adapt and use the same concept, but they get more creative with it. And we'll go back to this because this actually has been purchased by a customer, and I'm sorry if you're the customer because I held on to it for a couple extra days just so I could make this video. But this was another very common practice. And you can see it works very effectively to hold foliage in. And that was a big point of that. And you don't necessarily have to have a net, but yeah, you kind of get what I'm talking about. And again, I'll make a separate video on this later. So yeah, I know it might be a dull topic and a lot of you guys are gonna probably be like, okay, I knew that. But I just love teaching people who might have this question and are afraid to ask or whatever, a little niche detail about history like that, rambling and stuff. And I don't always like doing shorts because I can't get as much information as I want to out in 1 minute or less. So sometimes I'm going to make videos like this. I'm not apologizing, I'm not asking for permission, I'm just explaining to you why I make weird content like this. Because I think it's really interesting. Now, again, so just to recap, nets have been used since about the end of the First World War. It's mainly the interwar years you start seeing them pop up. Just, again, field expedient examples. And then nations, military would start issuing them. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure most militaries in the world have used or do use currently some sort of net on their helmet at one point or the other and all that stuff. I don't think there's a military in the world where somebody hasn't at least made a net out in the field and put it on so they could attach foliage and stuff to it. So it's a weird thing. Why not just use a cloth cover? Well, you can use both. Anything to just break up the silhouette of the helmet, reduce glare and shine, and to be able to attach camouflage to break up the silhouette even further, because the net does that on its own, like I said, but when you add scrim like this, it breaks up the shape, which is something that the eye picks up on. So yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed watching or looking at a couple original examples from, World War II all the way up until very recently. And I don't have any more recent examples, otherwise I'd show you, but that Mark 6 is probably the most recent. That's probably around 2010, somewhere around there. And people still do use nets, I've seen that. Even US soldiers. They'll put nets in there and they'll weave like radar screening and stuff in their helmets too. So I hope that answered the basics of why militaries have nets on their helmets, and they have since World War II. It's a very iconic look on the US M1. Obviously, you can see this. And then, Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, you see these nets on there. You're like, why do they have nets on there? Well, that's why. So hope you found this informative. Let me know what you think in the comments. What was your favorite style of net and style of it being worn? Did you like the chicken wire the best? Did you like the combination of the German M72 with the amoeba camouflage and then the net itself on top of it? Do you like this with the scrim? Did you like the wire with the foliage in it? This is probably one of my favorites. It's so cool. And then when it dries out, it breaks up the silhouette. Even though, all right, never mind. I'm gonna stop rambling, nerdgasm thing. So anyway, just figured I'd share that with you. One thing I did forget to mention is that eventually the US also started making covers, and they had slits to attach foliage in there too. So they did think about that. Now, nets are a lot cheaper to make, and they're a lot easier to replace. So when you see pictures of like Marines and people in like Vietnam and later with these just shredded covers, yeah, they have foliage slits, but they also had a band later on in Vietnam that you could attach camouflage with as well. So it just becomes kind of an appearance thing at that point, because the nets, I don't know, they're not all uniform. I don't actually know the answer to that. But yeah, I just figured this, like on the German cover that I just showed you, the SS cover, that yeah, they did factor in that that thing. The amoeba cover doesn't have slits in it, thus the net. All right, now I'm being serious this time, I swear to you. I'm done rambling, done being a nerd. I will eventually make a short on this, but it's just going to contain a fraction of the information just to kind of get people to check this video out. So if you made it this far, let me know which one was your favorite. If you like the covers better, if you like the nets better, the combination of both, like we talked about with the scrim versus natural foliage, you name it, just let me know, because I don't have a favorite. They're all cool to me. Love them all. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support my work and you think this is cool and all that stuff, I do have a Patreon. The link to that is in the description. But if you can't do that, I totally understand that. And just liking the video is, you know how to do, because everybody says it. Just like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and again, let me know what you think in the comments. That all helps out. So yeah, hopefully you learned something. I really appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you on the next ranty nerd video that talks about cool things, and I have too many things in my collection.